Okay. Okay, ready? All right. Semi-final number 2 to find out who will play Sidnev in the finals. DanV and Mecex in 3, 2, 1. Tetris. I. Hey, you want to switch places? Mecex decided to stand up to show some awareness of the dangers of blood clots. Of course, when you sit too long, you can develop blood clots, and it can be not nice. But now is sat back down and is actually not talking. Oh, you can see what they were going for there. The spin into another spin, but unfortunately fails with the first hurdle. But shouldn't be too much complication here for Mecex. Mecex, one of the most notorious people in this community. And literally anti-adjusted. Literally had everything perfect, and then decided to adjust to make it bad. And is laughing about it, which is what you should do when you do stuff like that. But Messtex is into some danger. 39,000 here for Mecex. Mecex! Oh, gets the bar tuck, but gets the bar tuck. Left side is still accessible. Gets the bar over. So this is very, very scary, but... Oh! Mecex. Mecex doesn't get the tuck in, but gets it all the way over to the left side. Needs something. Gets a couple of singles. My god. There you go, Mecex with a dirty Tetris. Oh my god, okay, Mecex hanging another bar, but just gets another bar and just puts it over to the left side. 86,000 here for Mecex, 164 for Dan. But Mecex used to be quite a fast tapper, but one of the players who switched to rolling and has definitely gotten very good with it. Like, jokes aside, whatever you want to say about Mecex, Mecex is an absolutely brilliant player, and they wouldn't be in a top 4 in a field as stacked as this if they weren't here. No, of course they weren't here. Oh my god, I sound like Biden. If they weren't good. Oh, Messtex tried to go for a line spin when they could have literally just tucked it. But I respect it, you know. You want to go for the cool spin. Yes, you know, SE versus Sidnev did happen, and it was literally everything you would have expected from that matchup. 236 here for Mecex, 298 for Dan. Despite Messex's shenanigans, it's actually still anyone's game. It's close to a 100,000 point lead here for Dan. Dan unfazed, just playing solid Tetris. 346 for Dan, 284 for Mecex. If you're wondering, yes, this is actually CTWC Austria. And usually when you have a CTWC country event, You expect the semifinals to be full of people from that country. Well, every good European player decided to show up to this event, so that's why you got a semifinals with 2 British people, 1 Dutch person, and 1 Spaniard. Where in Austria is this? We are in Vienna, the 19th district, at the wonderful Respawn eSports bar. Alright, Messtex into level 19 at 426. Dan has already surpassed that score and is going to do one better. Gets a Tetris 5-10 into level 19. Good adjustment there. Dan is very good at those adjustments. Oh, Mecex hanging the square piece. Still has a few burn options available. Now takes a double, but has covered up the well. Left side should be low enough to not have it be too dramatic. But oh, speaking of drama, Mecex going for this Tetris. Gets the Tetris 488 for Mecex. 547 for Dan. Mecex filling in another Lombard dependency. 498 for Mecex, 552 for Dan. Tetris for Mecex goes up to 529. Dan at 580. Dan's just been playing solid, able to just maintain this lead. As I say that, Dan hangs a bar. It's not high enough to make the next bar too complicated. Those hangs just do happen sometimes. Tetris there for Dan. 648 for Dan. 615 for Mecex. Mecex looking for lots of square pieces. What? If that was an adjustment by Mecex, I love that. That was amazing. That was really good. It looks simple, but it really does take very good reaction time and does just make everything so much cleaner. Mecex has taken the lead all of a sudden. It's actually neck and neck. 742 for Mecex, 751 for Dan. We are looking at a photo finish here as we are fast approaching level 29. 753 for Dan, 774 for Mecex. Oh, Dan is running into some issues. Held the lead for most of this game, but all of a sudden Mecex rallying back and has taken the lead. And since we're this close to 29, now Dan has to mentally prepare for some sort of 29 magic. $811 here for Dan. 922 for Mecex. So Mecex here. One more Tetris available. Gonna transition into level 29 at 970. Dan has one more Tetris available at 849. So it has actually turned into a significant lead here, and Mecex piling onto it with a Tetris into level 30. Over the 1,000,000 point mark. A11 here for Mecex, but this left side now is burn it down. L piece is great. Another L piece is fantastic. A23 for Mecex. Dan with a Tetris goes up to A00. Oh, and Mecex running into some issues. Mecex's board is falling apart. Dan needs 5,000 points. Doesn't get the bar over! Doesn't get the bar over! Oh my Christ. Alright, game number 2 in 3, 2, 1. Tetris. What? Mecex got to the semifinals via a nail-biting match against Adam MTS, the DAS World Champion. It was an intriguing matchup because, well, if you know Adam and you know Mecex, you struggle to think of two people much more different. If you're hearing those Windows noises, I apologize. I don't know what's causing them right now. Shut up. Okay. 95,000 for Mecex, 94,000 for Mecex. Getting Hotmail. And the Hotmail doesn't exist, you lovely human being. Alright, this is classic Tetris. I need to behave myself. 108 here for Mecex, 142 for Dan. Mecex is probably hoping for an L piece to try and spin into that, make it a clean solve, but it's turned into a bigger mess than you really would have hoped. 136 for Mecex. Ooh, missed the adjustment there for the dirty Tetris. Going square right as a default move was probably a better idea anyways. It's by no means a blunder. But this bit of messing about here for Mecex has allowed Dan to take an early advantage. 282 here for Dan, who hangs a bar. And doesn't want to get the next one over just yet, but is going to take the Tetris first. And finally with the bar, is going to put it over to the left side. Not 309 here for Dan. 213 for Mecex. Mecex.
This looks like a modern stack.
Gonna get the T-spin into the Z-spin, which is gonna definitely help out with this board. Feels like Mecex has been playing with unorthodox swells here for the majority of this game. And doesn't look like they're gonna stop just yet. Gets another Tetris. 267 for Mecex. 338 for Dan. $70,000 point lead here for Dan. And Dan with a much cleaner board. Messtex has essentially had this garbage on their board for well over 50 lines, I think. Ooh, Mecex really needs a bar. Does not need those S pieces. Able to handle them decently, or well enough to hold out for the bar. Oh, Mecex. Oh, Mecex gets the T-spin, but still hasn't opened up this Lombard dependency. Trying to burn it down. Gets it in. But all this burning is just allowing Dan to build up more and more of a lead. Dan currently at 438. Mecex at 293. But Mecex, if they're gonna burn, might as well Tetris while burning. Gets a Tetris. And Mecex now just 14 lines away. $346 here for Mecex. 508 for Dan. All right. Mecex at 395. Dan at 532. Dan yet to transition and is a bit complicated, but slow enough that shouldn't be in any danger of topping out. $541 for Dan. $448 for Mecex. Mecex with another dirty Tetris, and looks like finally Mecex returning home. I don't know. Mecex after a very long time abroad messing about with dirty Tetrises, experimenting, has returned home. 511 for Mecex, 552 for Dan. Dan is 1.5 levels behind as well, so definitely do keep this in mind. Dan with a much more advantageous See, I read country in the chat and then I just said much more advantageous country, which would be such a ridiculous statement to make. But what I was gonna say is a much more advantageous board. As it's about even, but Dan has, once again, 1.5 levels worth of lines in hand. 693 for Dan. 661 for Mecex. Mecex is from Spain. Dan's from the UK. So in the middle of 25 here for Mecex at 724. Middle of 24 for Dan at 783. It was a slow down from Dan in the later levels of post that gave Mecex the opportunity to play a great game and finish out with a win. It looks like Dan does not want to give them the same opportunity. Trying to just keep it up. Gets another Tetris. 878 for Dan. Mecex a full level ahead at 827. This is best of 5, yes. Mecex filling in the Lombard dependency. Good choice. But does lose one Tetris at least. Loses another Tetris with that burn. And Dan is just trying to put his foot down here in this game number 2. 979 here on 27. 884 into 29 here for Mecex. So it's going to need to be something special here for Mecex. This is actually still a survivable board. Mecex trying their best, but it's not going to happen. Mecex tops out at 896. Dan, too solid. Alright, both players are ready. Game number 3 in 3, 2, 1, Tetris. Hello, I said Tetris.
Oh, fuck, okay.
That's a very interesting shirt there from Dan. If you look at it from far enough, I feel like you might see something that you probably don't want to see. If you're like really creative, I guess. 45,000 for Messtex, 47,000 for Dan. Neither player is messing up hugely here at the beginning. Dan currently at 119, Messtex at 121. Not really much in it so far. In fact, there's actually nothing in it. Oh, Mecex missing the tuck. And right now, could be a bit scary here for Mecex. Lombar is what they need. J-piece would have been great, just one piece earlier. Lombar not too bad. LRJ needed. Decides not to use the bar for the LRJ dependency. In that situation, it's hard to gauge whether it's a better move.
Sorry. It's the only thing I know how to do.
Messtex at 145. Dan at 215.
Good point. They just gave me already too much. Anyway.
196 for Messtex, 269 for Dan. So Dan once again building up an early lead here. Talked about Messtex a little bit. Definitely a very, very strong player. And a player who's been around forever. Absolute veteran of the community. One way or another. Dan. Definitely not new to the community by any means, but hasn't been around as long as someone like Mecex, by no means. But in that time period has achieved quite a lot. Back-to-back reigning UK champion. And had to defeat Richard in 1 year and SV in the next year. And the UK is an absolute hotbed of Tetris talent. So to come out of that tournament as the winner 2 years in a row tells you something about the quality of Dan. Also, CTWC top 16 player. Just had the misfortune of running into Eric that day. And wasn't able to continue the run any further. Another 5 and below there for Dan. 456 here for Dan, 383 for Mecex. Mecex looking for the perfect roof burn, but the S pieces decide to rear their ugly heads. L piece there for Mecex, 412 for Mecex, 501 for Dan. And over 160,000 points ahead, now 130,000 points ahead. Mecex at 463, Dan at 593. So both players now into level 19. Mecex at 534, Dan at 641. So maintaining this 100,000 point lead here is Dan. Both players running into the same drought. Mecex's board looking slightly more equipped to deal with it. Although those are some good burns here for Dan. Both players still waiting for the bar. Mecex gets it right there. And Dan gonna follow suit. 679 for Dan. Mecex at 595. Dan ending up with a J dependency is Tetris ready, so takes the bar. Oh, adjusted there. Had to create some delayed burns with that adjustment, but At least was able to use that J for good. Tetris there for Dan goes up to 791. Mecex at 736. So Dan at 836, Mecex at 773. Tetris here for Mecex goes up to 806 into level 25. Dan at 866, still on level 24. Near 100,000 point lead there, as they were at the same line count for a second. Mecex rolling ahead there with a couple of Tetrises, but still behind in score and ahead in lines. Both of these games, both of these players just quietly putting up these ridiculous scores. Dan is 1 burn to 1.2 before 29. Tetris for Dan has maxed out now. A33 for Dan. Mecex at 951. Dan at A69, but is being forced to build up this S-tower over on the right side. Messtex is also maxed out as Tetris into 29 at A61. Dan at A87. But Dan will likely not Tetris here into 29. We'll transition at A95. So less than a Tetris lead at this point for Dan. Oh my god, Dan going for the Tetris. Gets the bar for the Tetris. B40 now for Dan. Adding on to the lead is Mecex. Mecex not happy with that Z placement. Would love a square piece, but doesn't get the square over, and Mecex tops out at A83. Game number 4 in 3, 2, 1. Tetris. Dan now. It's been an intense set. This is by no means been one-sided at all. Every game it felt like could have been won by both. Dan having to do his absolute best here. To get it over the line. Roman, I can only assume that my Vienna and your Vienna are 2 different places. Because Vienna's a city in America, isn't it? Oh my god, Dan just did a tuck to solve, but in reality just makes it, okay, he gets the bar, okay. 72,000 here for Dan. He gets away with a delayed Vits. And Mecex at 75,000, trying to get away with building row 3 left wells. That is an awkward situation. Always interesting to see how top players solve those types of situations, but in this case you can see from Dan's reaction he was not happy with that solve. Dan is getting up high. It's not at the point where he'd say he's in huge danger, but definitely bad things can happen. Oh my god, oh my god, that was an adjustment, wasn't it? So Dan currently with about a Tetris lead here over Mecex. On which console they play? NES's. Or actually, one of them is a Retron. I think. But I mean, yeah, original console. So 249 here for Dan, up to 272, 235 for Mecex. There are channel predictions there for this match. And last I looked, it was a 97% of people picking Dan as their winner. Now, Dan is a fantastic player and one of the best in the world. But Messtex proving here they're pretty capable themselves. This has been honestly a fantastic set. It's been super intense all the way. Dan's look just a tick more solid, but can never write off Mecex. 335 for Mecex, 373 for Dan. Dan with the Tetris goes up to 419. Mecex at 359. $466 for Dan. 409 for Mecex. Mecex, a very rare game where they're actually trailing in lines, considering their aggression and tactics of stacking up all the way to the board. Stacking up all the way to the board. Stacking up all the way to the sky. Mecex here really uses an L piece, but gets the L piece into a Tetris. 526 here for Mecex. Gonna go up to level 19. Dan here is already on level 20 at 598. Dan is slightly ahead in lines, but definitely in the advantageous position here in this game. Looking to close it out and book a ticket into the final to face Sidnev. $678 for Dan, $595 for Mecex. Nice adjustment there for Dan. Both players playing clean, although Dan's left side not looking too great. Could definitely use a T-piece or two. L-piece not too bad, but ooh, delayed burn there for Dan. And having to build more delayed burns on top of it, which means lots and lots of burning. That's a double right there, does Dan. Just allowing Mecex to get closer and closer within 40,000 points and is a full level behind. So every game, Mecex able to stay competitive. Now, it's hard to say who's in the advantageous position, but just a minute ago was definitely Dan. Tetris there for Mecex at 776 on level 24. Dan 10 lines ahead at 823. Mecex currently at 784. Dan at 888. Tetris for Dan goes up to 923. Mecex at 856. Dan here at AO2 has maxed out. Mecex at 931. Oh, Dan here. Only 20,000 points ahead of Messtex. Isn't able to get the bar over, so Messtex now has a chase down. A56 is the score that Dan topped out at. Should be doable. A57 gets the bar over. A couple more lines will do the trick.
That's it, right? Let's
Yes.
go!
So Messtex. This has been an intense set. The final game of the semifinals. Sidnev has already booked a spot into the finals. Mecex and Dan have already put on a classic here in the second semifinals, and it's all come down to one game to decide who will face Sidnev in the finals here in Vienna. Game number 5 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Tetris! Oh my god, the crowd actually said something. Thank you. I don't feel lonely anymore. But I mean, it's just been intense. Both semifinals have delivered, have yielded a ton. One of them definitely you'd expect it. SV and Sidnev, the two superstars of European Tetris, facing off and put on another instant classic. Little did we know we were about to witness what we've witnessed here. It's not world record breaking scores, but it's two players going blow for blow, both of them believing that they can win. And 4 games in, I genuinely could not tell you who's going to win this match. So Dan, 119, Mecex at 159. Oh my god, Mecex in some trouble up top and doesn't get the bar over, and Mecex! Dan still needs to get the Tetris and gets the Tetris. It's a heartbreaking ending to what was otherwise one of the best matches we've ever seen on European soil. A heartbreaking ending, but what a story for both players. Dan? Mecex, man.